for coming here. This is an amazing place to thrash around. This is my book. I'm very, very proud of it, and I made a few notes because I'm used to memorizing things and making them rhyme. I have done up to this point one reading, and so going in all the way. I started writing Bright's Passage because I think that songs are short stories. Songs are stories, and I always thought I was a writer of stories. I've never really cared for storyteller. I always think of a storyteller as someone in a vest. But I love stories, and I love combining things I'm thinking about and letting them kind of swirl around in a pot and come out through songs. There's so many songs in my life by people who have made so much of a difference in me, in my own life. Something like Famous Blue Raincoat, or The River, or Moon River, or Every Time We Say Goodbye. Great songs. Crimson and Clover. These songs that there's a story back there, and that if you could open the envelope of that story, there would be something underneath, and something that you could unfold and read. And I always thought in my life that and I was taught very happy-go-lucky about how I thought The River by Bruce Springsteen was a great novel. It was waiting to be a novel. And so at the end of working on my last record, So Runs the World Away, there was a moment when I after struggling for a long time to write something that felt good to me, I was suddenly writing a lot of songs. I wrote a whole bunch of narrative songs, kind of longer narrative stories, and was recording them and recording it and finished, and sort of had this great feeling of accomplishment, and felt like I'd made something of myself, And I had this extra song, which was about a guy who hears intermittently instructions from something that he thinks might be an angel, but he's not quite sure. And I love the idea, but I didn't really have a place for the song. I worked on it and I finished it, and to me the song was sort of like this weird gargoyle that was kind of just going to suck its thumb in the corner, until I recorded another record or something else happened, and I didn't want to turn off the faucet. I felt like I'd spent a lot of time working to really feel like I was back in the flow of writing again. And for anybody who writes or does anything, that you have to kind of spend your time continually doing. Once you stop, it takes a little while to get started again. So I started writing. I started to realize that I wanted to try what I'd been thinking of for a while, which was to kind of go down the hallway of a song and go through one of the doorways and just start to find out the world that was behind it. I don't know if you've had that experience where you're listening to a song, somebody's song, and your mind takes you to a place in your own head. You kind of go through a doorway and you're in your own kind of reverie. And I wanted to see what that was like, to kind of follow a song through into another place. And I had this great idea. I had a plan. This song was going to give me, that there was the plot, everything was there, it was totally set. I was really psyched. I thought, this is going to be really fun. I've got the plot, so I know what's going to happen. And then by the second page, there was a horse that was talking. And that had not been in the initial plan. So I wrote I went on the road. I wrote every day. I wrote every day for a certain amount of time and for a certain amount of words, and I just kept things going and finished a first draft in about 2 months, and then over the course of the next year, kind of edited. And I'd like to just sort of throw myself in, if that's cool. This is the very first page, so I won't set it up. The baby boy wriggled in his arms, a warm, wet mass, softer than a goat and hairier than a rabbit kid. He held a blade over a candle flame for some time, then cut the cord, rubbed the baby with a wetted shirt. When this was done, he laid the child in a basket near the fire, and then stood at the head of the bed and looked down at his wife's face a long moment. Abruptly, he bent low and placed his head near her mouth, staying all the while stone silent, waiting for some whisper from her lips. At last he stood straight once more, seeming to disappear into the still blackness of the low rafters, as if he had become just another of the cabin's shadows. The child began to cry, and he turned to look at it lying there by the glow of the dying fire. The man paced the floor, biting the large front knuckle of his fist. At length he picked the child up from its basket and lifted the flap of heavy hide over the doorway, stepping out into the last of the blue twilight as the rising sun began to gild the topmost trees along the crest of the ridge. He again put his hand to his mouth and could be seen from the dark of the nearby chestnut tree to bite down hard on that knob-knuckled, much-abused fist. When the fit had passed, he sat down cross-legged on the ground, his crying baby boy in his lap. The child's eyes were shut tightly, but its paw searched the air waveringly for something until the man put his finger down and the little hand grasped it and held it. The two waited there a while. By and by, the angel spoke from the darkness by the chestnut tree. She's gone. Of course she's gone. What am I doing out here with the baby if she ain't gone? There was silence. Yeah, he said after a while, his voice catching. She's gone. That's how it had to be. You didn't tell me that she had to die, the man said accusingly. You said to do whatever you told me to do and you'd keep us safe. The silence continued for so long that he knew the angel would not answer him, but he continued to sit there anyway, one arm holding the child close, while the other arm worked a stick into the packed dirt. The child had red hair and cried and cried. He went inside and pulled a small black lacquer box off of the shelf, and from this box removed an ivory comb, yellowed with age and impossibly delicate. The comb's handle was carved in the shape of a kneeling woman, her hands folded in prayer. She wore a long gown with flowers on the fringe, and her hair was plaited into long, flowing tresses on either side of her face beneath a tiny crown. It was ancient, this comb, having belonged to his mother, and before that, to a queen of England. He sat near the head of the bed and began to comb the tangles from his wife's hair. She had thrashed all night, and the odor of stale sweat hung in the room, mixing with the plummy tang of blood. He spoke softly to her and touched her face often as he ran the comb through her hair, parting it at the scalp, arranging it on either side down her shoulders, like the woman on the comb. Then he straightened her body on the bed, arranging her arms across her breasts so that her palms met in an attitude of prayer. When this was done, he took a dead black ember from the fire and, using a nail, mixed it with some of the goat's milk in a tin cup. He pulled the Bible off the shelf, lifted the age-slackened cover of the heavy book, and using the nail as a quill, beneath the names of long-dead others, wrote, Rachel Bright, 1900 to 1920, wife of Henry Wright. He lifted the nail from the page and surveyed the grisly black scrawl of the epitaph. Outside, the horse began to slap its tail against the trunk of the chestnut tree. He dipped the nail once more in the ink and added, Mother to the future King of Heaven.